Okay. Well, thanks, Rick. And yeah, I think we'll get started. I wanted to first say good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Craig Schlauter. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Ukiah. And we're really excited that those of you that joined us this evening were able to do so. Definitely, COVID has not been good for any of us, but it also has not been good for our general plan update, which we had to momentarily put a pause on and reconfigure this workshop to try to get as much community participation as possible. Really going back to when we did our 2019-27 housing element update, we've had a very strong focus in engaging the community as much as possible. And what we're trying to go for with this increased engagement is planning documents that represent our community. And those of you that have heard me speak at some of our workshops will realize this very familiar thing that I say, and that is that we want these plans to be realistic, accessible, and implementable. And the only way we'll actually be able to achieve that is with active participation from the community. So thank you for being here tonight, for sharing your opinions, for sharing your ideas. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick and Brent, but just want to encourage everyone to please speak up, as well as let us know how we're doing with these workshops. We'll likely have other opportunities in the future of this general plan update for further community engagement. We want to know, if we're still in this COVID era especially, how are we doing? Is there ways that we can reach the community better? Is there different ways we can hold these workshops so we maximize community participation? That's what we want to know from you. So feel free to email me directly, or you can email the planning division, which is planning@cityofukiah.com. Thank you again for being here, and I'll turn it over to our general plan specialists, Rick and Brent with Mintier Harnish.
Okay, and I'm Rick Rust for you tonight. We're going to take you through a short presentation, and then, as usually is said, a workshop is supposed to be a time for us all to do some work together, and we're looking for your opinions on several questions as we go through, but we realize it's been a year since we had the last workshop, and so we haven't really had a chance to get everybody up to speed with what's been going on, what had gone on before, and if you haven't been involved in the general plan process, a chance for you to get up to speed with what we're doing right now. So tonight, we're going to give a general plan overview. We're going to talk a little bit about the alternatives process, and that's really at the stage we're at right now in the project, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, about what that means. And then we're going to talk about the online mapping exercise. So understanding that everybody can't be online at 6:30 p.m. on a given night, we're also going to have a chance to do an online mapping exercise. And this also allows us to talk about alternatives a little bit more specifically, where you can point to an actual spot on a map. And this is something you'll be able to do online with your computer, and we're going to keep that open until the 22nd of December. So you've got a week and a half or so to do that. Plus, it's not required that you actually attend this workshop. So if you know somebody that would like to provide some input regarding the future of the community, feel free to point them towards the website, and they'll be able to go on and do that mapping exercise directly. And then we're going to break out for small group workshops. We've got a number of individuals who have volunteered from the community to help facilitate discussions. And we've got 5 questions we'd like you to go through in that 50 minutes. Just some general ideas about the future of the community. I'd like you just have a nice discussion with those that get assigned to your group about what the future may be. Now I've got to figure out how to get polling question number 1 up. So hopes to make this a little bit more interactive. You should be able to vote on your computers about this poll. Obviously, this question isn't really meant to give us too many insights into the future of the community, but figured we'd get you used to doing a poll here. We got about 10 of these that we'll go through here tonight. We got 15 of the 20. Even the facilitators and staff, feel free to throw in on this as well. Okay. So you can see the results there. Glad to see that we got a lot of people that really love virtual events, so we'll go on from there. All right. Now, as far as the general plan overview, what is a general plan? General plan is really the blueprint for the future. It's the city's guide to what we want to be over the next 20 years. And it is a long-range plan in that sense that we are looking out to 2040. As the name elicits, it's also general. It's not a specific guide. It's not like your zoning code where it tells you how many feet you must be from the next building, but it provides broad guidance on a range of topics, everything from land use to transportation to public research, public and natural resources, economics, public safety, etc. So it covers a wide range of topics. And then really want to make sure that we provide that guidance for what we're supposed to be in the future. And these are some of the main topics. Environmental sustainability has come up in a number of interviews and first workshop that we talked about, talking about this idea about objective standards. That is, how do we set guidelines for what we'd like housing to be in the future as we move forward? And then transportation mobility is a broad topic. It's not just how we move cars and trucks around, but how do we move people on bicycles and pedestrian access and other forms of transportation. The scheme of other things that the city does, the general plan is sort of the basis. So everything else that the city has, its zoning code, its subdivision maps, its building permits, they all have to be consistent with the general plan. So it's important that the general plan provides a good foundation upon which the rest of our planning is built.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't think your PowerPoint is showing.
Yeah, that'd be a problem. How's that?
You got it.
Thank you. You didn't miss anything. There wasn't too many pictures before. This is the picture we were looking at before. So as far as it being a foundational element for the rest of the general plan. And this is what we're trying to achieve, is having good guidance, because everything the city does from a planning and natural resource and resource management standpoint has to be consistent with the general plan. We also need to provide a connection to the city's strategic plan goals. These are ones that are adopted by the council as far as planning for the future, looking at the enhancement of our neighborhoods, economic development as far as growing our business community, and developing quality infrastructure to help support the community overall. Now, in the process of things, we're in the third phase, or the alternatives choices. We actually were back in the existing conditions. That was completed a little while ago, but because of COVID, we haven't had the chance to move forward with our public workshops. Now, over the summer, we thought we would wait it out. That when we first had this happen in March, that we thought it would just be a few months and it would be over and we would start having public workshops again. By the time we got in the summer, it was like, well, we either have to wait a long time or we need to start moving forward, which is why we've now gone towards this part of bringing in a different look. In the scheme of things, after the alternatives, we move into preparing the actual general plan document. Then we do an environmental review to see what the environmental implications are of our choices, and then go for certification and adoption, with all that wrapping up this year. We're going to go for a question number 2. So, if we can see who's on the phone tonight, do you live and or work in Ukiah? All right, last couple seconds here, and we're going to flash it up. All right, you seeing the results on the screen? Good, okay. So most everybody is living and working in Ukiah, or at least living in the community. We go back to our presentation. A little delay here because I have to keep switching back and forth between the different screens. All right, so if you marked that you do live in Ukiah, how long have you lived here? If you've lived here before but then moved away and came back, you can add it all up. Okay, so the biggest number, we're in the 10 to 20 year range, but the good thing is that we've got people in the whole spectrum, from just moved here to have been here a big chunk of their lives. So it's a good thing at a workshop to have a lot of different opinions to be able to share. We admit a few more people in here. Okay. Now, as far as community outreach that's happened so far, I mentioned it's been about a year since we had the first community workshop. There was a joint session held with the City Council and Planning Commission early on in the project before this, but this is the first time we reached out to the broad community. We had about 75 people attend that community workshop. Y'all may remember that when we went through an exercise with the magnets doing a visioning statement and had people working at different tables on issues and opportunities and mapping those out. We also appeared at the Pumpkin Fest last year in 2019, where we were able to get people to come by, spin the wheel for a prize, and ask some questions locationally about different aspects of the community and where there may be issues and opportunities that we need to address. There's also been a newsletter published on the overall process. There's been an online engagement as far as some polling that's happened. And then we've sent out a variety of e-blasts or email messages out to the broader community. The Ukiah2040.com website is your main source for everything there is to know about the general plan update. From here, you can download materials on general plan basics, how to participate in the project. You can download existing documents, such as our existing conditions workbook, resources or other plans, and then our FAQ, or frequently asked questions, is down at the end. The site can be auto-translated through Google. If you'd like to translate that into, for instance, Spanish, that can be done through this button at the end. And on the right side, in case, again, you have friends or neighbors that haven't signed up, or you haven't, there's an email list. You just type in your email address, and then you'll be added to our notification for anything about our general plan update in the future, including upcoming meetings. And there's a comment button there in green on the right side. If you click that, type in your email address so we can see who it's from, and then you can send us a message. So if something comes to mind that you weren't able to say tonight, that's a great way just to provide information into the discussion. Question number 4. Just the workshop we had a year ago. How many of you attended? Okay. Got 23 out of 28 votes so far. Anybody else want to add in? Last chance. Like I said, there's about 10 of these questions, so not too many tonight. We'll get off to the main event. All right, we're gonna stop with that. Kind of a 50-50 split, more or less. So for those of you that haven't attended before, thank you very much. And we hope to have some other events that you can join us at, as well as sharing it with others that weren't able to come this time. Okay. We do provide a summary of all of our inputs. Just like tonight's event, for the things you do in the small workouts, we will not workouts, the breakout groups, we'll provide a summary of what gets said in there. For the things that we got out of workshop number 1 and Pumpkin Fest and online engagement, that report's available on the website should you like to have a look at what was said at those earlier events. There was an existing conditions and trends workbook. This was finalized June 2020. So it was done kind of back in the fall for the first draft that staff went through. Again, we had comments provided in by the public. Then we got some of the workshops in the Pumpkin Fest that helped enhance this a little better. But the existing conditions and trends workbook is kind of a one-stop shop for finding out information about the community. So whether it be the history of the community or issues about current threats to the community, the background information that helps support the general plan is in here in a shortened form. Now, the existing conditions will be expanded when we do our environmental impact report towards the end of the project, but this helps get everybody on the same page as far as the issues and the opportunities that affect the community. General plan vision is something that got mostly done, but didn't get finalized with the council before we stopped out for the COVID-19 issue. But we did at our first workshop ask for community's inputs on the vision for the future. That is, what are their aspirations going forward? We did this with kind of a fill in the blank exercise or a Mad Libs project where people could fill in their ideas about what the future should look like. And they were able to write in their own pieces if they didn't like what we gave them for choices of words. Public arts was a popular write-in candidate in here. The overall input of this was a statement, something like Ukiah will be a welcoming and diverse city that values and promotes community safety, education, and overall community health. The city will continue to maintain and enhance its local parks and support community events that are inclusive. Ukiah will be a sustainable community focusing on resiliency and protection of our natural environment. Now, this was the top runner as far as the vision statement. And again, this needs to go to the council for their input and concurrence, but that's kind of an idea of what a vision statement is and where we currently are in its development. Now we're going to talk about the alternatives process, which is what our workshop tonight is about. So we want to explore the potential for land use changes in the city and the planning area. Through this and through the online exercise, we're going to start working towards creating a formalized land use alternative or scenario for the community. And then we'll be evaluating the effects of each alternative on housing, the economy, circulation, etc. And working with the community, the planning commission, and the city council to come forward and identify a preferred alternative or a direction that we want to use to develop the rest of our general plan. Now we're going to go back our polling. Quick question, what housing does Ukiah need the most? We probably didn't capture every possibility you'd like to have here, but Got 17 out of 27. We got a couple more people joining us from the outside. So for those of you that have joined since the last polls, you just click on the choice that you'd like to support. We're going to end in just a second here. So overwhelmingly, 3/4 of you say all of the above, that housing is a significant need in the community and something that needs to be addressed as we go forward.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think in the next poll that you do about housing, you should include a line about homeless housing. Thank you.
Yep. That has definitely been an issue we've heard a lot about through all the interviews and items we've done and experiences in the community. So that will be addressed for sure in the general plan. Right.
Could I make a comment?
Okay.
Your conclusion from that question, that survey, was that housing is a significant need of the community, but you didn't, there was no basis for making that conclusion. The conclusion should have been that all areas of housing were needed, not that housing is a significant need of the community. You didn't ask that.
Take that as a note. There's we will use that direction going forward. It's actually something, if you have those needs, you have to have that housing. So it's kind of a similar item in my mind, but you could take that opinion as well. As we go through looking at this, and even in our discussion tonight, you can talk about different areas for ease of approach here and have a look at this and picture where your house might be or where your business, if you don't live in the community. Broke the city into 4 basic quadrants plus the downtown, and using Perkins and State Street as the main dividers. These are just easy references to use on a video call as opposed to specific locations or specific planning areas, if you will. When you go on the online map, you're not constrained by these, but for tonight, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about which of these areas you might live in, just to get a sense for how well we've gotten distribution around the community. So area A is in the northeast portion of the community, just above Perkins and to the east of State Street. Area B is then the mirrored side of Perkins along State Street again, 101 being a major boundary through most of the area. Area C in the southwest corner. Area D is the downtown component, centered along Perkins Street and School and State Streets. Area E then again is the northwest corner. Now from this, and we have one last look at the map. I'd like to ask you, which areas of the community do you live in? And if you don't live in town but work in the town, you can use that location as well.
Can I see the map again? I live up on the west side, so where would that be? Area A, B? I can't even remember what it was now.
West side, State Street is a divider, and then if you're north of Perkins, you're in E. If you're south of Perkins, you're in C. Okay, last call. So 50% came out of area E, which is the northwest corner. And then area C was the next biggest area. So primarily on the west side, if you will, west side of State Street, which is where probably the predominant amount of housing is in the community. Couple more questions for you here. Go back to those. And some of these you'll have a chance to discuss a little bit more detail when you get into the breakout rooms. Obviously, in a poll question, we can't get that detailed. In general, where do you think we should plan for new housing? Vacant land in the city? We seem to add, we have two A's. Small landfill or underutilized sites, downtown or mixed use locations. We went with all the above. This is one of the items that you'll be able to provide more specific information on the mapping exercise that'll be online. Number 8. Does the city need more commercial or industrial space?
I don't see no.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say.
More needed.
You're right. Well, just don't answer, and then we'll subtract that out from the normal responses.
You
We'll add
can't
back in
submit if you
tomorrow.
don't answer.
What's that?
You can't submit if you don't answer.
You just hit the X and it will take you out of the survey.
Thank you. Everybody done with, because it'll be hard to tell if you're done because we only got 11 people that voted. So I assume we're going to have a big number that we don't need more. Okay, and thank you for the comment. We definitely do need to have a couple of no's in there. Apologies, we didn't have that covered for you. If you answered yes, is there a certain area you think it should go? Even those that didn't answer because you don't think you need any more, if you think there is some area that has a need, you can go ahead and mark that.
I don't see the poll up. Were you meaning to put a poll up?
Yeah, I don't see the poll either. There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go. Thank you.
Now this way you would just mark whatever you think is the primary area that has this need. You can't obviously choose for each individual location. Okay, that was the last of our polling things. We're gonna wrap up our presentation and get you off to your workshop then.
Rick,
Yes, somebody
I
have a
have a
question?
question. Yeah, I have a question for you, and this is um, possibly this is not the appropriate place for it, but I have something that I wanted to add to the vision statement. I can probably print it out and chat. I think maybe I can put it in chat, but I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it.
If you could put it in the chat or on that website comment box I showed earlier,
Okay.
that'd be the best place. As I was mentioning, the planning department's planning to take this forward to the city council soon.
Okay.
And if you had any inputs and send those in one of those ways, we'll be glad to share that with them.
Okay.
Thank you. And that goes for anybody else if you'd like to provide any inputs. And there is a paper on all the inputs received on the vision statement and what the different choices presented are. And those are available on the website under the documents page. But definitely provide any input you'd like. We're going to highlight the online mapping exercise. This is something you can do at any time. It will be open through the 22nd. So if you go to ukiah2040.com/map, you'll go to this. This is the screenshots are taken from a phone in this case, because it's not as clear probably on a phone. And I will show you what it looks like on a computer in just a second. This does require that you sign in or sign up. You'll enter an email address, you'll create a password, then you'll create a screen name. And the screen name is just what your comments will go under. So if you'd like to create an alias, that's fine to do. What happens with this map is everybody's inputs are available for everybody else to look at. Like a Facebook thing, you can like somebody else's comments or you can add your own comments to it. So you can log in through Facebook or Google, or you can create your own username and password. And this is just the way this software works in order to keep track of who said what and allow you to add in items later on if you'd like to, and to be part of the overall conversation. What we're going to ask you is some simple questions about what are good locations for single-family housing, what are good locations for multifamily housing, where do you currently shop, where are there issues with roadways, what areas need better bicycle or pedestrian facilities. And these basic questions are based off a lot of comments provided by the public earlier. And you simply click on one of these plus symbols, and then you'll click on the map where you think that marker should go. And I'm going to bring that up on my other screen so you can have a look at it. So when you go to the website, as I said, you'll create a password, or you'll just sign in if you already have a password. Then on the map, just like on the phone, you're able to zoom in. You can click and drag the map around. So zoom into wherever you might want to go. Then you can click on this is a good location for new single family homes. Click on the map. It'll ask you to write a little description. You can even upload photos if you'd like to tell us something. And then once you do that, you click submit, and it'll make that little marker on the map. And as you go forward with the rest of the community, you'll get to see other people's markers and comments and items about this. So be very interested to see what you feel are good locations. And if you look at the map, one thing I wanted to point out here is we talked about the city of Ukiah, which is the area in the dark outline on the map. But the city actually has a planning area that goes much larger, all the way out to the north towards Lake Mendocino. Now this may be modified to make a smaller planning area, but it's pretty typical for a general plan to look beyond the city limits. And if there are areas just beyond the city limits that you think any of these should apply, feel free to mark those on the map as well. And we want to see how useful and easy this is to use. If you all find it to be easy to use, please leave us a comment on the website. If you find it difficult to use, let us know that too. But if this is something that's attractive to use, we would like to know, because we can create more of these questionnaires to get more input on items that have to do with the geography of the city, where things should be located, where are community facilities, where are parks, what should we do about adding different things to our overall community framework. So if you feel this is a good tool, let us know. If not, then we'll try to find something else. But in our COVID days, we really have to look at things like this to help make a difference in getting people's inputs on the future of the community. All right, small group discussions. What we
Question
want to
on
do
the,
now is break you up into some small groups for about 50 minutes. Share my screen again. So each small group will have a facilitator, somebody that's volunteered to help us through. They're not there to tell you what your answer should be. They're there to be a unbiased facilitator and just make sure they take notes about some of the comments that you had, and just have a nice discussion with those that are at your table. These are the questions that they're going to prompt you with. If the city expands in the future, which parts of the community can best support housing and why? Now we got our 5 different areas, but it could also be outside the city. So if there are areas outside the city limits you think are appropriate, let us know. Are there areas that lack services such as parks, schools, grocery stores, public transportation? What is needed? How can we enhance our neighborhoods in general and make them better? What are areas of major traffic issues? How should the community address ideas of sustainability, green buildings, greenhouse gas reductions, etc.? So 5 broad topics. You've only got 50 minutes. Probably some of you could probably talk the whole 50 minutes about one of these bullets, but make sure you share the time with others. Try to get through all 5 of these. We'd like this to be more of an ongoing dialogue where we could have more discussions like this, but we want to have your inputs now to make a difference in that. So we're going to do this. Plan on us starting in about 5 minutes, because it'll take me about 5 minutes to distribute everybody to a different room. But what's going to happen is you'll be put into a breakout room with other people randomly, and some individuals who will introduce themselves as being your facilitator. If ever you need help, there's a help button at the bottom, and that will bring me into the room for a little bit. But let me take a few minutes to get you set up and broken out into some groups. All right. Okay, well, it appears the software is not allowing breakout groups today. So we're just gonna have to throw it out for the crowd. So we had the earlier discussion about, I'll share that with you here. So we had our earlier discussion about if the city expands in the future, where should the city be looking to expand? This includes going beyond just our city limits. We can look back at our map. So for anybody in the group, if you could just say who your name is and give us your input about, are there locations within one of these 5 lettered areas that you feel can support some expansion as far as new housing, commercial, industrial, other types of uses? And are there areas that are adjacent to these? Say you think north of area E has some potential. Anything you can tell us would be appreciated.
Okay, I'm Laura Fogg, and I have an opinion, which
Okay.
is we already have a lot of semi-industrial stuff up in the North State Street corridor in Section A, and it seems like maybe incorporating and managing that in, or more of that into the city might be smart. Not
Okay.
necessarily for housing, but there's, it's kind of a, like a hodgepodge of, little bits and pieces of stuff that have grown up along the old highway.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good comment. Any other insights anybody else has or would like to add to that?
Could I add to it? My name is Pinky Kushner, and I agree with Laura. I think that it's very obvious that the area between 101 before the North State Street exit and Section A would be an area that obviously should come within the city domain and for either housing or industrial. But for housing, it would need parks. It would need, it has a bike path now, but it would need recreational locations. And the obvious recreational location is in that little area that is just to the east of Highway 101, just at the top of the A. There's a little piece, and that's where the ballpark is. And that would be, if that had accessible access by bike or by foot, that would be a perfect location to expand housing and mixed use.
We're talking about this area in here?
I am talking about that area there that is outside the red dots.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
And the red dots are the current city limits for those looking. Okay, thank you for clarifying on that too.
So, it's Sharon. So I know that in the past, that area up there to the north, on the west side of 101, has been proposed in the past for housing, and they always run into trouble with it because of this current zoning and because it's in the county, and because it has ag land in there, and which is what it's zoned for, and so that's always been an issue in the past. And also down on the other side of the highway, I think it has some of that that's in a flood zone. I'm not sure.
The other side of the highway could be what? I'm sorry.
It could be in a floodplain.
Yes, okay.
But I agree that the housing, that's a logical place for the housing is on the west side of 101, right next to the city limits there. And actually,
General
there is
comment about
housing.
this area.
There is some housing in there that is in the county technically. That's part of Vineyard View in that area. But on the other side of that, that would be a logical place for some housing. But I also think that there ought to be more within the city, more in
Infill?
The city limits itself right in the middle. You know, like there are a few vacant lots. There are some places that could support second units.
Okay.
Just for clarification, sorry. Just turn off yours for a second. Just for clarification, the Brush Meadow Apartments, the new housing that was put in place or built recently, is currently not within the city limits?
Correct, that's in the county. As well as the new RCHDC project that's going in across the street.
So those are out. Sorry, there was the echo thing happening. Sorry. So basically those are not within city limits. Okay.
Correct.
So all of on this map, area A, all of the land that's not within city limits is land behind like the Rayleigh Shopping Center, that area?
That's all county.
Okay. Interesting.
Got
Thanks
some
for
general
the
comments. Any other comments on area A while we have the map up?
I've
This
got
is Margot Frank, and I know that there tends to be concentration when affordable housing is built of lots of it going into one area. And I really want to support that throughout the city as new housing goes in, whether it's small places behind existing homes or on vacant lots, that it be mixed so that you have throughout the city economically mixed neighborhoods and not a concentration of the well-to-do in one section and the people in affordable housing in another, and that we try to aim for that as a goal. Thank you.
My name is Helen Sizemore, and I think the city now owns the Palace Hotel. Is that correct?
I think it's in a conservatorship for the, yeah.
Receivership, yeah.
That's not actually correct. It is privately owned right now. So the city does not own it.
But they will own it?
No, we will not.
It should become an apartment building. And it could be senior apartment or it could be mixed use, but something needs to be done with it. And it seems like it's been dragging on forever. Who's holding up the works?
Rick, I don't know how far you want to go down this particular.
Yeah, I think we want to just get some comments and input, and we can get people to get back with you on that relative to the building in the future. But there's been several comments about the reuse of that building. We've gotten that workshop one and for your comments tonight. So something that we'll address in part of the plan.
I also noticed that along State Street in area B, north of the restaurants and the Grace Hudson School on the east side of the road, there seems to be a lot of land, and there is a sign of a business, but it seems like there could be better use of that land for development of multi-use housing.
Okay.
I mean, obviously yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Thomas, can I ask a question? Has there been much thought given to doing something similar to what they did in Windsor, where they had mixed use, where they had commercial below and then apartments above, or condominiums above? Because then all of the downtown, all of that area down in B, all of that would be would be appropriate for stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to make the same suggestion because I think that combination, especially for walkability to services, is really important. And like Helen mentioned, the conversion of the palace. And I know the Methodist Church is interested in selling their property potentially, but having a few large or multi-story developments closer to downtown would make a lot of sense too, especially when we're talking 20 years in the future.
I will jump in here. My name is Brent Gibbons. I'm part of the consultant team. The town of Windsor was brought up. We actually completed the Windsor general plan back in 2018. Downtown Windsor is actually a single development, so it's not several projects. So that mixed use retail on the bottom, condominiums and offices on top. That's one giant development is their downtown. So it's a bit different the way that they've designed it. It doesn't necessarily look like that. But one way you can approach development like that is to have general plan policies and eventually zoning be more favorable and conducive to mixed use infill development on a vertical level.
Which I think makes sense.
Yeah, I'm Laura Fogg chiming in on this one again too. I think it's just really the wrong path to follow to keep on looking at more unused space for more suburban single family housing. I think we really need to concentrate our housing development up or in the downtown area and vertically. So that will be less of an impact with traffic and pollution, and we wouldn't be using up all of our precious agricultural land on new housing if we start building up more 3 and even 4 stories.
Okay. Any other comments on question number 1, or we can move on to number 2?
I would make a comment. This is Chuck. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how to run this thing. I would like to make I would like to second or third or fourth or whatever it is, the idea of putting people above commercial buildings, but not to restrict it to the downtown area. Put it wherever, well, especially new stuff is going in.
Okay.
Rick?
Craig?
Yeah, just I wasn't going to mention anything because we don't like to interject staff too much and let the public comments kind of continue and the discussion continue. But since we've heard a few comments on this now, just for a bit of education, within the city's downtown zoning district, which there's 3 actually zoning districts downtown, mixed use is currently allowed. So that does exist in our downtown zoning code. That was a change in 2012 when the city updated that document. So it is allowed. We just don't have really any or very few examples of that. And what we've heard from developers in the past is that it's just difficult to finance. Now I will be quiet.
All right, thank you.
Could I say something in response to Craig?
Okay, follow up.
Pinky Kushner, I'd like to say that I think one of the problems in thinking about the expansion is hunting for developers. I think we have developers within the community, and we don't really have to look to outside developers to put in traditional development projects. And it seems to me that a lot of this that we've been talking about is aimed at large development projects where somebody will come in and put in 100 homes. And I haven't heard anybody want that anywhere in Ukiah. That's all.
Okay. Sharon Thomas, can I make one last comment in regards to all of that? Part of the problem is not getting developers. Sometimes you get developers that want to do that, but when you have mixed use, which I'm totally in support of, but you have a hard time selling it to lenders. lenders are reluctant to lend for a single family residence, which would be a condo, with this sitting atop a commercial development. So that's part of the problem, I think. I bet it could change over the next 20 years. Who knows?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Let's look at number 2 here. Are there areas that lack services, and what is needed? So something a little bit beyond need a park bench in a certain place, but in a broad sense, what are community services we're missing?
Well,
Trees.
Trees?
Well,
This is Helen. This is Helen Sizemore saying we need trees everywhere.
Okay.
Can I
And
add
Ms.
to
Frank?
that?
Hang on a second. Ms. Frank had her hand up there.
Wagon Seller neighborhood has been waiting for a park for decades, and there's lots of kids in that neighborhood. They don't have they don't have a schoolyard, they don't have a park that's desperately needed, and I would like to see that would finally become a priority. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Thomas, and then Ms. Caldwell-Evans. Ms. Thomas?
Oh, okay. I have I'll make a comment on, and I second the whole thing on trees, and not just because they're prettier, they provide shade, which are, is nice, and they provide oxygen, but they also sequester the emissions of carbon. So they're environmentally friendly, obviously. They're natural, but we don't have enough trees, and we don't have enough replacement of trees that come down.
Okay. And Ms. Caldwell-Evans, and then Ms. Fogg.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that behind the Grace Hudson School, the light, I don't know what's the deal there, but there's no lighting. If you ever walk around this time of year behind Grace Hudson, where there's a huge, there's a block full of apartments right behind it, there's absolutely no lighting. I don't know what kind of planning was that, but it's just not safe. And then we wonder why, that area, it's in such condition. But I work in that school, and many times I've happened to park behind the school because for whatever reason. And if you walk out at night, it really actually is mind blowing. And I wanted to bring it up with a different group, but I think this is a great platform to share that.
Thank you. And Ms. Fogg, and then Ms. Monroe.
Okay, neighborhood markets. The West Side Market is the last of the neighborhood markets in Ukiah. There used to, when I moved here in the 70s, I believe there were half a dozen of them. And I mean, I don't know what you can do to control that, but they're wonderful to have in the neighborhood. And a downtown post office, which you probably cannot control either. We miss our post office desperately because it's that kind of thing that puts the heart in the community. And it also makes it walkable. All those merchants used to lug their money bags on foot down to the, or they would do their mailings and bring them all to the post office and stand there in line and talk to people. And it was wonderful. And another concern I have is that I think there was there's not much in the way of markets in the south end of town. And also I know there was some talk once of trying to create a mercado in some area of the town, which would be a beautiful thing. That's a lot of ideas, sorry.
No, we're looking for a lot of ideas. Ms. Monroe?
Yeah, well, I agree. Anything that enhances neighborhoods to get together and communicate, like the community gardens. I know you have one at Vinewood Park. I know the one on Gobi is on private land, but I do think things that get opportunity for neighborhoods to get together are really important, which parks can do too. But one of the things that I remember being struck with when I went to Ashland was Lithia Park and the lovely riparian zone. And we have that same potential with Gibson Creek and Ore Creek to have those kind of riparian zones that help people get out and about. And I'd like to see that happen more. I mean, I'm sure it's been talked about opening up the creek there at the parking area near the library. But I do think riparian zones are a wonderful opportunity for more trees and for getting people. I actually think it would make it attractive for people to come visit to downtown.
Ms. Frank?
I'd like to see enhanced public transit and it done in such a way, I know that the city doesn't have control of MTA, but that, so many people drive into town every day, especially when we're not in pandemic time. And it swells the streets and the traffic on the streets and makes it much harder for pedestrians and bicyclists. And if we can look ahead and say, that there are parking lots on the edges of town where people driving in from Redwood Valley or Willits park and get on a jitney bus that takes them, or a van that takes them into, on a route through town, I think would be really ideal because, Ukiah is a little urban, almost urban pod in a very rural county. And there needs to be a better transportation interface between the two. Thank you.
For others out there, there's quite a few more than I can see on my screen. You can turn your video on, or there's a raise hand feature if you'd like to get called on or make a comment. I don't want to limit it. I only see 12 people on the screen right now. So if there's more of you, turn your video on. And Ms. Fogg, and then we'll move on to question 3. Probably.
Okay, one more issue regarding rivers. We have this beautiful Russian river that is almost completely inaccessible. And I'm thinking about the city of Reading that has turned their river frontage into an absolute wonderland with bike trails at both ends, or on both sides of it. And you can do a 60-mile round trip with the 2 bridges that they've got with bike trails. And it's just a thing of beauty. I don't expect 60 miles out of us in the next 20 years. But it's just to have that river frontage be a parkland would just be fabulous. And it's so close to downtown too, but we can't use it.
I would
Mr. Evans, I saw you pop up. Was that, do you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I do. This is Chuck. I want to add to the idea of riparian development. When you go south beyond on the east side of the airport, you have the road. There's a closed road there now. And then there's the railroad, and all that could be made into a long park. And you could even extend it beyond, kind of like the rail trail, just extend it beyond that, I don't know the name of it, Emerald something, marijuana processing place down there that used to be the brewery. And on the south side of that, there's a nice wetland that could be restored. It's partially destroyed. And that could be a nice riparian area.
Okay.
There was, in the comments, in the earlier made comments, there was a lot of comments about needing a park in the south end of Ukiah.
Okay. Parks are a big part of a neighborhood. So our question number 3 is, how can we enhance our neighborhood? So we talk about building big things and where that might go, and we can do infill development for sure, but for our neighborhoods themselves, how do we maintain the character and charm, if you will, of our neighborhoods we have?
And I just wanted to pipe in real quick. I see that this conversation is going really well, and I see that there are several people who haven't jumped in yet, and I see some comments coming in on the group chat. So this is a relatively small group compared to some online workshops that we host. So feel free to jump in and throw your opinion. I'm keeping track of everything that everybody's saying, comment by comment. So feel free to unmute yourself and join the conversation.
I'd like to jump in here and talk about neighborhoods. One of the neighborhoods that is organized and done so well, the Wagon Sellers, really have had a struggle with the city, and that was mentioned before. And it's just a shame and very discouraging for other neighborhoods when the people living in that neighborhood identify a problem and go to the city, and the city doesn't listen. Over and over, for 20 years, the wagon sellers have tried to get a park. And I think that kind of, it should be a planning goal to somehow make the city listen and let the citizens express a desire and have that desire come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the comment. We'll make sure that gets in the discussion about what we're looking at. Mr. Evans?
Hi. Hi, Jim Evans. A couple of comments. One of the things that I work in education and have for 16 years now, and had the pleasure of being an underling of Kathy, who's here. And I think of when I came here, when my wife and I had kids, we raised our kids here. When we came, I remember going to schools and seeing more kids on bicycles. I remember, oh, cool, there's a bike path down, Dora Street. And there could be, like, as far as transportation and what have you, there could be more of an emphasis and maybe a coordination between the city and Ukiah Unified to get kids more active out on bikes, etc. Because where I currently work and have been for the last 6 years, there's 2 bikes and we've got 767 students where I work. That's one. And then another thing, thinking about parks, I definitely second more tree, or the 7th person to say more trees in the community. That park and that the dead end street that Chuck mentioned could definitely, I love the pathway through the center of town, and it's amazing. If you haven't taken the whole thing, I'd highly suggest it. It's amazing. The other thing in general around the south side of town, just outside of city limits within Grace Hudson area, the school is used as a park, and Grace Hudson, and they've had to, and if I don't know if you've been by there over the past years, they've built fences to kind of close it off so it's not a park. And although they've put in, the solar and all of that, my point is there still needs to be some kind of public space in the south side of town, because the district itself, because of certain things that happen at night and lighting and all of those things, have become an issue. So I think somehow expanding some kind of park at the south side of town would be great.
Thank you. Ms. Sizemore, you had a comment?
Yes, I think that the city needs to think about the residents in the city when they make the plan. So making a city attractive to the residents, what you're hearing is keeping the city connected to our rural environment. So bike paths are required. Bike paths are so important for every neighborhood. People will not go out in the street if they feel that they're unsafe. Okay. And the possibility of putting a curb on the car lane between the bike path and the car lane is a very subconsciously safe feature. And I've been in cities on bike lanes that have that curb, and it just doesn't matter how fast the cars are going in the lane next to you, because there's that curb there that will protect you from their veering off their lane by in some kind of an error. So I totally support more bike lanes and safer bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. And you give me another good segue then. Our discussion topic number 4, which was, are there areas with major traffic issues? This doesn't mean you have to sit a long time at a signal in your car, but it also relates to bikes and pedestrian movement and other issues around town. So what would we say about transportation and Fog and Ms. Frank after that?
Okay, I ride my bike everywhere. And I cannot imagine why the people who developed the Airport Park Boulevard didn't think to put a bike lane in there. It's pretty, I ride my bike all the way to Costco, and it would be really nice to have a bike lane on that road. Also, bike lane all the way out Talmadge Road would be more than wonderful. And I gotta hand it to people, the rail trail is, I mean, that thing is such a gift. I know it's got its problems, but oh heavens, to be able to get all the way through town on the bike trail is really nice. So thank you, city people, for doing that.
I agree.
Ms. Frank?
At the elementary schools and the high school and at Pomalita, at drop-off and pickup time, the air is more polluted. There are tons of cars backed up on the streets. You can if you're trying to get through that area, you can't drive through it at that time of day. And I know the school district is kind of banging its head against the wall, trying to get parents not to do that, but to park their cars and to walk their kids to school. But if there's any way that the city can support that, I really think that that's important. Those young kids are getting out of cars and breathing all those fumes that are right in their faces. And it's really adding to the greenhouse gases and the carbon emissions in our valley. And I just also want to say that everything we're talking about today has to do with addressing climate change. And our community's on the front lines of climate change. We're everywhere in this town is at risk for fires. And everything that we do needs to consider that. I know that that's part of the general plan, and it's an edict from the from the state legislature. But I just really want to emphasize that. Thank you.
Well, that's our last question: is how should the community address ideas of sustainability, which includes climate change, green buildings, greenhouse gas reductions, etc. So feel free to answer against either one of those questions as we wrap up our. Got about 12 minutes left in our session tonight. So Ms. Kushner, Ms. Thomas, then Ms. Sizemore.
Hi, well, I'd like to talk about the greenhouse gas issue and the city. I think the city, in a way, especially with the downtown project, it's been very hard on the neighborhoods to have that project going on. Dora Street has become a freeway, and it seems to me that the city is small enough and compact enough that we should have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout the city. When the speed limit on Dora Street goes from 25 to 35 and back to 25, the drivers don't know that. You're watching other things. It's time for the city to have a citywide 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. The other thing I'd like to say is that the big buses that MTA has bought are really detrimental to city life. They're huge. The windows are all fogged out. You can't tell how many people on them, but small buses for a city our size is much friendlier, and more people will take them and they'll be less threatening to pedestrians and bicyclists.
Ms. Sizemore?
I'd like to have the city require solar on any construction that's happening yesterday. I also believe that it would benefit all of us if there were some portable toilets and hand washing stations at the intersection of the rail trail and the major streets that cross it. Many people do not have places where they can take care of their needs, their personal needs, and we have to recognize that they exist. We're not providing them with housing, but we could provide toilets and hand washing, especially during the COVID crisis. They'd be, far enough away from commercial shoppers that they wouldn't, I don't know. They could be anywhere. That was just one idea of where they could be.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing
Thomas?
that,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. That's enough for me.
It's a good suggestion though, Helen.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas, did you add in there?
Oh, I was just gonna, again, push the paragraph. I don't know whether or not everyone had a chance to read it, but that last paragraph that I added, the first paragraph was the one that was one of the ones that are being considered for the vision for Ukiah. But the last paragraph was one that I added because I think that everything that goes into the general plan needs to be looked at through the lens of mitigating negative effects from climate change. Everything. And so I just like everybody to read that and confirm that they think it's important, that climate change is important enough to where that ought to be something that's right up front.
Is there no?
Yeah, that and reducing ways to reduce greenhouse gas. I mean, that's part of the mitigation or the impacts, and that also doing our part to hopefully eventually reverse climate change. But I think related to that is the whole thing of electric vehicles, that I think that some, especially apartments and other areas, may have difficulty charging electric vehicles. I think that needs to be considered when there's apartments or whatever, but maybe there need to be more fast charging stations. I mean, it would enhance commercial visits in town if there was fast charging, but I also think that neighborhoods will need it too. If people are going to be in concentrated living situations, they'll need a safe place where they can quickly charge their cars. And I think that's going to be really important. We need a transition to more electric vehicles.
Planning for that will be an important thing we have to look at. We've only got a few more minutes tonight. I wanted to make sure we did have a chance for somebody who hasn't had a chance to talk tonight. Now's your shot. Turn on your video, raise your hand, something else. I'd like to make sure everybody who had a desire to speak gets that chance. Meantime, Sizemore, I think you're next.
I would
Ms.
like.
Sizemore?
I'm ready to make a comment. This is Chuck about traffic lights. There's quite a few traffic lights in town that seem to be on their own schedule, that they don't react to cars or not cars.
Very slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have another comment. The trees that we're requesting shed leaves. The street sweepers go down the major thoroughfares, but the side streets that collect piles and piles of leaves don't seem to ever have the street sweeper go by.
Oh, maybe compost.
Right. I mean, I think that's what happens with the leaves, is they get composted. But it makes it difficult. People park on the street and then the street sweeper can't get to the leaves. You know, as we get to be a bigger city with more people, there may have to be signage that says no parking at certain hours on this side of the street so that it can be clean. It's nice to have a clean street. It raises the pride of the citizens. So that's something for the future.
Anybody else want to toss in that hasn't talked about anything before? Ms. Gibbs, are you?
Let's find the button first. No, I purposely didn't intervene because I've been in a lot of these things before and I wanted to hear what the other people had to say. But I definitely would like to underline the importance of greater density in a lot of parts of the town. I think we could improve the density and fit more people where they want to live. And I also think that we need to go higher. I think we need to stop with a limit of 30 feet or whatever it is in the city. I think it needs to be higher than that. And I think we need to imagine that people are going to walk up 3 stories. It's not really that bad. I lived in Europe where they'd walk up 5 stories or 6 stories. So I think we need to think about putting more people comfortably into the same space. And I think the idea of multi-use is marvelous. I think it should be more common than the single family. Single family, in my opinion, is a thing of the past. I don't think the world can afford single family any longer. So I'm a little outlier there, but I think that's the way it is, even in a rural situation. Because if we want it to stay rural, we need to put the people all in the same place and keep the rural out around it. Okay, that's my 2 cents.
For a few more, Mr. Evans, and then Ms. Monroe.
As we talk about development and expansion, one of the things that comes to mind, having been here since 2004, paving existing roadways and maintaining existing roadways. You go down Clara, you go down Low Gap, go to the high school, up towards the high school. We've had difficulty just paving our roads. I have family that live elsewhere, then I always said, oh, our roads are great, but the reality is we haven't been able to maintain them. And if we plan on developing new areas, we need to be able to maintain the roads that we currently have, and I hope the city is taking doing their due diligence to take care of it.
All right. Anybody new? Ms. Johnson, you haven't had a chance
I just wanted
before?
to piggyback on that because I live in Empire Gardens, which is just barely in the city of Ukiah, but this is a part of the city that is, I'm not sure necessarily why, but it's a little bit forgotten. There are a lot of streets that really need to be repaved, and it in my opinion brings down the property value of this area that's already struggles. And right in front of my particular house, I have a huge pothole, and so I just wanted to piggyback on that it's an area that needs a little bit of attention as far as the roads. I know they have done some repaving, but I'm not sure. There's some streets that maybe there's plan in the future to do that. Thank you.
All right, well, we're almost to our 8 o'clock time frame, but anybody else did not have a chance to throw in a new comment? All right, our last 2 will do Ms. Monroe and Ms. Thomas, and then we'll go to our finalization for next steps.
Yeah, this is fast. Driving down State Street at night is dangerous for pedestrian crossings. And it's such a wide street. I really think that needs to be done with either some lighting or something, because you don't see people starting to cross. And I've had some close calls that have shocked me. So I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. And then last, Ms. Thomas.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that because we're looking at long-term changes, that we're going to be looking at a lot of new development. And in order to meet the state requirements, we need to be looking at things like eliminating gas or natural gas and in new buildings, and having a sustainable source, which would be solar probably. And also that there are some neighborhoods where individual houses may not be able to utilize solar on their house, but there should be some sort of a mini grid, as it were, that has some kind of solar with battery backup that can be utilized by a neighborhood, or a 2-block area at a time, or something like that in new housing. That's pretty much what I was going to say. I just think that we need to start looking long term, not just short. Oh, permeable surfaces too.
Yeah.
There's no reason why driveways and roadways can't be made more permeable to where we don't, also are in the middle of drought. We're going to see a lot more drought. We're going to, we're getting drier. We're getting, more desert-like. So we need to be able to utilize whatever rain we do get. So there can be rain catchments on buildings when they're built. There can be permeable surfaces that allow the rain to saturate the ground rather than just run off into the drainage ditches, that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, wanted to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Got a lot of good insights and inputs, but really some of the hard work is still there, and you can do this on your own time. The address ukiah2040.com/map. Again, that'll take you to that online mapping exercise where you'll be able to zoom into the community and point out specific issues, provide your comments, provide a little marker, and those will all be out there for everybody to look at and kind of get a sense of where everybody's going. So before you forget and get lost in the holiday spirit, if you could take a few minutes to create an account for yourself and add some comments, we'd really appreciate it. There is a workshop just like this tomorrow night. Unfortunately, our Zoom account was going through a transition today, and they swore they'd get it done by 5, but they didn't. We'll probably have breakout rooms tomorrow, but the questions will be the same, the presentation will be the same, the characters may be a little different, but it's just meant to have 2 different nights. Feel free to come back if you really like punishment to go through again, but or you think of something else, feel free to go on the website. Again, that comment box right on the side. If you think of something you didn't get to say, or you'd like to spell it out a little bit more, or make sure that we know the particulars of your concern, feel free to type comments into that little box, and you can send as many as you'd like whenever it strikes you. It's important for us to hear from you now so that we can get together a set of alternatives that represent where you want to go. And really the mapping exercise provides some really there to what we look at. We talked about in general these broad quadrants, but now we can narrow down to the exact locations we might be talking about. And remember, on the map you can use the little plus or minus to zoom in so you can get familiar with the area. And we are looking at areas outside the city limits as well as inside the city limits. So feel free to mark wherever you have a comment to add to us. And there's no limit. You can add as many as you'd like. If you want to add a photo, if you want to add some description, that's all welcome as well. You're welcome to join us tomorrow night. But if you know a friend or neighbor that wasn't able to come tonight, please encourage them to come tomorrow. Jot down their ideas, and we'll take everybody else's inputs at that time. So with that, we're wrapped up for tonight. But again, thank you very much for coming. And Craig, did you want to close anything else out at this moment, or?
No, I would just echo what you said, Rick. We really appreciate everyone showing up this evening and providing this very valuable comment. And look for future announcements by visiting our website, ukiah2040.com, or if you have questions or felt like your questions weren't answered tonight, you just have general questions about the city, feel free to email me directly at cschlatter@cityofukiah.com, or the planning department's email address, planning@cityofukiah.com. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see some of you probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.